Okay, hello and welcome to the A.D.H.Deep-Dive, the show that's not about ADHD, but is filled with proof it exists. My name is David J. Mund, and this is the second attempt at doing this podcast. And some of this podcast is going to be, in a meta way, about the podcast. It is Sunday right now, the day before this episode is scheduled to come out. And yes, I am playing with a stress ball. I don't think, based on proprietary reasons, that I can say the name of this stress ball, because I happen to know the person who's writing the copy for the company that released this stress ball, and I don't think this stress ball has hit the market yet. So, for what it's worth, in this moment, I am currently playing with an undisclosed stress ball because I'm stressed. So visually, that'll be part of this episode here. It is Sunday, the day before this episode is scheduled to come out, and I shot an episode yesterday. And I kind of want to reflect on what that episode was. Maybe I'll cut to periods of that episode to kind of reference what I'm talking about here. But very importantly, I should note that yesterday ended up being an unexpected, very not good, bad mental health day. To the degree that during the podcast, I had come to the conclusion, maybe I should end the podcast, as in no longer do the podcast. It got that bad, which was not great. Let me tell you. Look, maybe we'll talk about it in just a minute here, but there's a war right now. And with my bad mental health day, I was considering all the other stressful things that are happening in my life at this moment, which, let me just say, technically on paper, my life is pretty good right now. And things for me are going well. I've got a bunch of new job opportunities. I just got a position as an editor for a marketing agency. So I'm like mostly work from home now. I'll still do the occasional, side hustle delivery shit, but I've got enough work to keep me busy for a while. I've had a lot of great opportunities with a bunch of cool bands recently, shot a lot of show recaps, and I'm working on a music video for 2 bands at this moment. I'm in a great relationship. We just walked around the other day and checked out a bunch of apartments because we're going to be moving in together in July, August, whenever. This summer, we're moving officially in together, even though I'm at her house all the time already. We'll just officially have a place that we can call ours together. I just released my first solo song in over 6 years and shot a music video for it, and I guess technically on paper the reception has been okay for that. I set these weird expectations for myself, which are just like, never do that, first and foremost. Don't set expectations, because you will only either be wildly blown away by the expectations, or you'll be painfully underwhelmed because they didn't meet your expectations. And that not only happens more often than not, but hurts a lot worse. So just don't set expectations for things. Just do things with the expectation that the only thing that you are required to do is just to do the thing. The only thing that is guaranteed if you do a thing is that you will have done it. But I'm going through a lot of changes right now. Looking for a new place, trying to pursue some sort of solo career, stepping into new jobs, taking on new opportunities, trying to, in one of the last episodes we talked about, like, as a writer, in one of the more previous episodes we talked about, like, as a writer, all I've ever written is like sad shit that I'm bummed about. And now that I'm in like a good enough place, I don't know what to write about, and that's stressful and scary. It's kind of that with life, where like suddenly things are going okay, and so I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with that information in my own life. And changes are happening so drastically that, like, in my mind, I'm like, well, what else am I supposed to change? What else am I supposed to do? I'm gearing up in my own life to make a very difficult creative decision that we will certainly get into in the future, but right now it's just not something that I can talk about. But it's something that's going to be a challenge for me creatively that I'm excited to embrace, but nervous about what that looks like for my life. You know what I mean? Which again, we'll talk about. I'm vague booking right now, and I apologize about that. But I was looking for a place to do the podcast because in my mind, all I wanted to do was talk about the war, and my roommate was home, and I didn't want to be screaming about the war on camera while my roommate is chilling in the living room. And not that he would have minded, I just like get insecure about it sometimes. Like the only person I can really podcast in front of is the guest on the episode, or Emma when she's just like chilling in the room working, while I'm podcasting. Beyond that, I get like really I get really nervous about people hearing me or seeing me, which is why oftentimes you'll see me just step out to the car and do the episode like I'm doing right now. And so yesterday I was like looking for a spot to do it, and I'm like looking for a public park to park in, and every single one that I went to was just like crowded with people, or there was like a bunch of children around, and I can't be a strange bald man whipping out a camera and like psychotically talking to it at a park where there's a bunch of children. The optics of that are not great. And so I was just like driving around for an hour to try and figure out how I'm going to do this episode. And I was just getting more and more frustrated, and I was spiraling about like these like big life changes and these big life decisions. And by the time that I parked at a place called Fish Ladder Park, which is like a very public area downtown where, fish, if you don't know, I don't really understand the science here, but fish will use this little like fish ladder to, instead of hopping over a dam, they will like use the ladder and swim upstream so that they can continue on through the river. And people fish out of that for some reason. I don't know. It feels predatory in a way that it's like, I don't know. I don't understand catch and release fishing anyway, but I also, even if it wasn't catch and release and it was, catch and eat, I don't know that I would eat a fish. Even though I'm a vegetarian, I would not eat a fish out of a public river in a downtown area. I don't know, it just feels kind of gross and dirty. But there were so many people around there, and it was the place that I landed on just to go, fuck it, I'm doing it here. And it ended up being a half hour of me basically crying. Because again, originally I wanted to talk about the war, which is stressful in and of itself. And yet, on the other hand, I was like complaining about my life, and I was very woe is me, and I was getting frustrated about like, how dare I be woe is me while people are literally being bombed in the Middle East? We're threatening nuclear Armageddon against a bunch of innocent civilians. And I was just frustrated with the whole process. And I basically just wanted to reflect on in this moment, because I did want to do this. I did want to do it over again. I didn't want that to be the episode, because that's not really fun to listen to. And maybe it's relatable and understandable, but like, I should go to therapy for that. But one of the things that I talked about in that episode, or in that take, was like, it feels like when you go to therapy or when you go to the doctor or whatever, because you've been so sick and then all of a sudden you're fine and you're like, why am I here? Why did I do this? Why did I go here? Because it's more frustrating like, I wish if I went to the doctor because I'm throwing up that I am at the peak sickness while I'm there so they can treat me and figure out what's going on. But oftentimes you wait until the last moment to go to the doctor because you're like, listen, it's gotten unsustainable. I need to just go. But you've already reached the peak and now you're on like the downswing and you feel better than you did. And when I was going to therapy, it was kind of the same thing where like, I had weekly meetings, or sometimes it was like bi-weekly meetings, like, or every other week. I don't remember. Sometimes it would be twice weekly. Sometimes it would be once a week. Sometimes it would be twice a week every other week. But I'd have this like really, really bad week. And then I would kind of work through it on my own. And then I'd get into therapy And my therapist would be like, so how we doing? And I'd be like, pretty good. I'm doing all right. And she'd go, well, how does that make you feel? Like, that's good, right? I mean, she wouldn't say, how does that make you feel? It's just the trope therapist comment. But whatever, insert how does that make you feel type comment. So the conversation is, I'm doing all right. Oh yeah? How does that make you feel? Really bad. Because if all I've ever known is bad, and suddenly I'm good, that's bad, right? Like, something is changing and I'm not used to this, and this lack of normalcy is strange and I'm uncomfortable. And anyway, so while I was podcasting, it boiled down to me not really knowing what to talk about other than what I was sad about in that moment, which was nothing, which made me think in that moment, maybe I need to stop the podcast. Maybe I shouldn't podcast anymore. Because I do also want to be real here that, like, to the people that listen, I love you so much, and I'm so grateful that you have been on this journey for 104-ish episodes. Is that right? 104? I don't remember. 100 plus episodes. You've learned so much about me. We've had a lot of really interesting guests. We've had a recurring cast of characters. So you're like getting familiar with the people in my life who I love and care about, who I want to do this podcast regularly. We've experienced a lot of my life changes via this medium. But the numbers are dwindling. People are listening less and less. I have less and less energy to try to I'm filming this from my phone in my car. And at the beginning I was trying to make the setting nice. I was trying to have a good backdrop with good lighting and good set design with my plants and stuff. And I care less and less about what this looks like, or I have less energy to care about what this looks like. I want there to be good audio so you can hear me. So I try to clean up the audio a little bit and get to a place where I'm in a remote area so that you don't have a bunch of traffic noise or whatever. But the audience is dwindling. My energy to promote this is dwindling. I'll try to at least pull a clip from each episode, but to make it this grand, well-researched thing, and to get a bunch of new and exciting guests, and then have to do my research on this guest a little bit so I can ask them about their life a little bit more. I end up either I'm just not very good at scheduling that in my life more as time goes on. And so yeah, I just had these reflections of well, if the audience is leaving and my ability to make this better is dwindling, then maybe I do end the podcast. And I don't want that. And I don't know that I will do that. But that might have been the first time I really considered that. And I wonder as an audience, how does that make you feel? And I'm not trying to fish for no, David, you're great. We want you to stay and keep the podcast going. Please, we love this. It's a big part of our life and whatever. Because the people who do listen every single week. And I know that it's every other week now that we do it every other week. But it's become a part of your routine and your commute to work. And, you're invested in my life. And I appreciate that. But I wonder, do you have suggestions? Do you have ideas? What should we do going forward? Because this does feel like sort of a community decision. Because if you're going to be here for the ride, you should be able to help give me directions if you want. So I guess that's me opening the floor and asking you to either comment or DM me or whatever. What do you think I should do? Because I'm kind of at a loss right now, and I don't know what to do. And I also just want to reflect on the fact that it's crazy to me that I'm pretty much saying the same stuff that I said yesterday, but with a better attitude. And this is the insanity of poor mental health. As I get older and as time goes by, my anxiety gets a little bit better, my depression lessens, but I still have anxiety and depression. And it flips on a dime. And, you think that after dealing with this for so long that you get a grip on oh, I'm just having a bad mental health day. It's okay. It'll pass. Therefore, I'm fine in this moment. But while it's happening, it's still so real. Depression, when you're in the throes of it, is just as bad as it ever is. But then when you get out of it, you have a reflection of I know what to do next time. I don't know. My ability to self-regulate has improved, but the ability to regulate while my emotions are unmanageable has not. So when it's bad, it's still bad. And then all of a sudden I snap out of it like a trance. And then I reflect on it the next day going, that was crazy, huh? So, yeah, I think it's just a good reminder that I'm not trying to make this a big commentary on life and humanity or whatever, but you never know what somebody's going through in a given day, because one day they could be the most jovial, excited, fun, happy-go-lucky person. And the next day they could be isolated, parked in their busted up Kia Soul in a downtown fish ladder park, debating on if they should give up on every creative endeavor that they're currently on right now. Because what's the point? There's a war going on. And then the next day they'll go, that was crazy, right? Wasn't that nuts? Man, I'm feeling good. Can't wait to go to hot yoga today. Which I can't wait to go to hot yoga today. Oh. But y'all, there's a war going on. Can you believe that? Yes, said everybody. I can believe that. Because that's just what we do now. We elected the no more wars, I'll improve the economy guy. And now we're in a war and the economy is falling apart. Gas is almost $5 a gallon. And his supporters are still sticking by him. Now, I do recognize that the independents that he won over last time are fleeing. But his base is still with him. One of the things that I was reflecting on this morning that actually got me, I actually growled about, I was like, ugh, because it was so real, is when we got into this war, he said, this isn't, everybody was saying, this isn't a war, it's a military excursion. The president has the right to do limited strikes. He's the commander-in-chief and whatever, but it's not a war. And now we're just openly saying this is a war. And where's Congress? Because, little history lesson, when we invaded Iraq, there was an actual vote in Congress. Congress has the sole authority to declare war. What does that mean? I don't fucking know. But we're supposed to be in a representative democracy, so the representatives are supposed to speak on the behalf of their constituents. And so they should be forced to vote. To say, I, on behalf of my district, authorize this war. I sign off and condone on this military exercise. And we voted, I say we, just as America, voted to invade Iraq. And that is one of the things, among many other things, that lost Hillary Clinton the election in 2016, because a lot of people looked and said, well, you voted to invade Iraq. One of the biggest foreign policy blunders of our entire nation's history. Well, you can't be trusted as a commander-in-chief because you'd do it all over again. You'd get us into a war. You signed off on a big mistake. And, love him or hate him, trust me, I hate him, even though this is coming from a place of inauthenticity. Like Donald Trump had that, because Donald Trump had never voted for a war. He did say in interviews that he believes we probably should have invaded Iraq, but he just kind of goes with the wind, right? So anyways, what the War Powers Resolution does is it forces Congress to publicly make a declaration that I am in support, even though it's supposed to be not I, but on behalf of my constituents, sign off on, endorse, condone this war. So that way later on, if it was a mistake, we have an actual record that this representative voted in favor of or against, whatever. So we keep a record. And that did such damage to so many people's political ambitions that what Congress would rather do now is never take a War Powers Resolution vote ever again. Because if it ends up being a bad move, then in the future they can just go, well, the president was the one who did it. He's the one who should have to suffer the consequences. Even though I may have supported it personally, I don't have to go on record in a public forum and say that I voted for it. So now we'll never see a War Powers Resolution. I'm almost certain. And don't let Democrats fool you. Plenty of them would vote for this as well. There are plenty of Zionist Democrats that encourage this war. But because they're in the opposition, it's more politically expedient for them to say, this isn't good. I don't like what the president is doing, because so many Democrats' opinions are they're not for anything. They're just against Trump. And that works for a while. It didn't work for Kamala Harris, obviously. Didn't work for Hillary Clinton, obviously. It barely worked for Joe Biden. But you gotta be for something to earn the trust of people. What are you going to do? Not just what are you against. Anyways, so now we're not going to see a War Powers Resolution. We're not going to see a vote. This is all Donald Trump's war. And recently, as you I'm sure are aware, he threatened to nuke Iran. And, did it end up happening? No. So now all the Republicans can be like, see, you liberals, you leftists, you Democrats, you're just so dramatic. We knew he wasn't going to do this. So all you do is freak out, and he didn't do it. Relax. And now there's a deal on the table. Well, what happened today? And let me also just fully recognize that by the time this episode comes out, everything could change. Everything could be completely different than it is today. But we hear that the talks fell apart and there is no deal. So at first we got into this to say that, back in June of last year, it was we are bombing Iran's nuclear program. We completely obliterated it. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. Mission accomplished. Well, great. Okay, well, shit. I don't love the optics of violence. I don't love the optics of bombs and just doing whatever we want because we want to do it. But you got your win. It worked. They don't have a nuke. Well, and then we started bombing them again because Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. Well, I thought you completely obliterated their nuclear program. Okay, so you didn't. So you were either wrong then, you were mistaken, or you lied. Okay, great. Well, now we are just bombing the ever-loving shit out of them to kill the leader. Okay, great. Well, we got the leader. Ayatollah Khomeini. Now, there's a new leader. A different Ayatollah Khomeini. So it wasn't for the regime change because it's the same regime. Which, to be very clear, used to be the thing that was the quiet part that they're just now saying out loud, that we want regime change. Donald Trump campaigned on like, we can't keep getting into these regime change wars and whatever. And so what does he do? He bombs Venezuela and takes their leader. Regime change. He threatens Cuba. They're now going to try to like overthrow the Cuban dictatorship. Or Cuban, I don't even know if it's probably a dictatorship. I gotta be real, when it comes to foreign policy, I don't know shit about Cuba. I know that one of the main reasons we're frustrated with them is because of the Cuban Missile Crisis back, because it had more to do with Russia than anything, and it was a communism thing. That's what it always is. They're communists, and that's why we got to take them out. It's big red scare shit, McCarthyism nonsense. And so we bomb Venezuela, take their leader. We threaten Cuba to take their leader. We talk about taking over Greenland, which would be regime change. We would install ourselves as the regime. Now we're getting into Iran to regime change, you know. And it's just like, we said this, back in June of last year. There are so many reasons to believe that it is other things, but this is also a holy war. Like, this is part of the greater Israel project, where Israel wants to be the dominant force in the Middle East. They're taking over Palestine. They're bombing Lebanon. Netanyahu encouraged us to get into Iraq and Afghanistan because of weapons of mass destruction, taking Iraq and Afghanistan off of their threat list so that Israel can be even more emboldened and strengthened in the Middle East. Now it's Iran, then it'll be Turkey, then it'll be Egypt, then they're going to want to come after Saudi Arabia, and they're just going to want to continue to dominate the Middle East. And trust me, I've got plenty of these details wrong, but like, in biblical scripture or prophecy or whatever, these actions are what directly ushers in the Antichrist, and the Antichrist has to arrive in order for Christ to arrive. And then something about like, the Jews are God's chosen people and Israel and blah. It's like, it's holy war shit. So, they're skipping over a step. That like, this is all to like bring back the Messiah, and then we'll all be, with God or whatever. It's like, yeah, but what happens in between that? The Antichrist, right? So like, you're doing this to usher in the Antichrist. And I feel like fucking Alex Jones, because I'm talking about the Antichrist, and then Israel's bombing over there in Iran, and I feel like I'm losing my fucking mind. I'm losing my mind over this shit, because it's like, how are you not aware that what you're doing is fucking crazy based on ancient textbooks? And then again, this is what I was freaking out about yesterday in the car, is I'm fucking spiraling about this like holy war nonsense. And I'm like, I should quit my podcast. My life is too good and I don't feel good about that. What are we doing? This is World War III. The trope is that like World War III will be fought with nuclear weapons, or maybe the phrase is, I don't know what World War III will be fought with, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. Maybe we're not at the peak right now, but Russia's still fighting Ukraine. India and Pakistan had a conflict last year. Pakistan is now sending warfighters, or what are those? Not F-35s. They're sending planes, bombers to Saudi Arabia to defend them against Iran. We are with Israel bombing the rest of the Middle East, or bombing Iran, who's bombing the rest of the Middle East. We're threatening all of our South American neighbors, Venezuela, Cuba, Mexico. There are others. There's still horrific shit happening in Africa. China's going to invade Taiwan. Like, this is World War III. And will it end up being a nuclear exchange between all of these countries? I don't know. Somebody's going to do it. And if somebody does it, that means everybody else goes, well, there we go. It's time. Here we go. Let's do it. This is our only option now. And me, like a child, is just sitting here squishing this little undisclosed squish toy, which I dropped earlier, and it got dog hair on it, and that's all I can look at now, and I feel dirty and gross. this is kind of how the podcast went yesterday, but I was also crying during it. So now I'm just like, I've reached the hysterics point. And this will still end up being a short episode. It only ended up being like 25 minutes yesterday. But, you know, do I think I'm going to quit the podcast right away? No, I don't think so. But something's got to change because, again, like, I appreciate that you and I are having this dialogue. But some of the frustration in my own mind was like, I'm not getting new listeners. And that's frustrating. I should be growing and I'm not. But do I really want new people to come hear me crash out every 2 weeks? I don't think so. Do I want to instead have a bunch of guests on and I ask them about their life and their history? And I don't know. I don't want to be like a talk show. I don't want to be an interview show. I do want to have really cool and creative people on here. But I also want to recognize that like a little bit that's selfish because like that's when new listeners show up. And like, I don't know. Today's going to be 78 degrees and it's really hot in this car. And I can't be out here very much longer. So I guess what I will talk about is, speaking of being in a car, I'm about to go on a weekend tour with the band. We are starting in Ferndale on Thursday, April 16th at the Orchid Theater, which is a really dope venue. It'll be my first time actually playing it. Then we're going to Akron, Ohio on Friday the 17th. Then we're landing in Lansing, Michigan on Saturday the 18th. So that's 3 shows back to back to back. It'll be my first weekender. I'll be sleeping in the van. I know that the guys want to do like a cheap hotel or a motel or whatever, but like part of me wants to be more comfortable by doing that. But part of me also wants to be like, nah, man, I'm supposed to like be in a van. I'm supposed to like do the whole damn thing, like sleep in the van. But I also like want to save money. So I'm like, why don't you guys get the motel and I'll get one of those little personal battery operated fans so I have one for myself. I don't know what the plan is, but we are going on a weekend tour. And then there's a bunch more shows lined up for the year that I will talk about. Too many shows, maybe. I don't know. Part of me is like, all I've ever wanted to do is play a billion shows to a bunch of people all over the world and whatever. But then it happens and I'm like, man, that's a lot. That's a lot of shows. So we'll see. Anyways, this weekend is going to be fun. It'll be my first weekender, like my first official weekender. We've done like back-to-back shows, but like my first full 3-day run where we're sleeping in the van and we're driving from show to show. And maybe that'll change my attitude a little bit. But as of right now, with it being 78 degrees later today, I'm realizing, fuck, it's going to be hot in that van. And it's going to be post-show with sweaty, stinky dudes. And yeah, we'll see how that goes. I will report back. But for what it's worth, thank you guys. Again, I want to make sure that I don't gloss over this. I get really whiny on this podcast sometimes. And there is a select few people who are here every single week, regardless. And I want to make sure that I'm not letting my envy of bigger audiences or my desire for bigger audiences gloss over the fact that I'm extremely grateful for the audience that I have, because you basically are my therapist. You don't offer me advice, which is good. You probably shouldn't. Except for the times I specifically asked you to offer me advice about like, what should I do next, y'all? But I'm extremely grateful for being able to use you kind of as a sounding board and crash out to every other week. We've been doing this for 3, almost 4 years, maybe 4, almost 5 years. I can't remember. I think I started in 2022. So yeah, 4 years, which is crazy. October of 2022. It's nuts. I was a very different guy back then. I was a very different guy yesterday. And I think, if anything, the continuation of this podcast has allowed me to reflect on just how different of a person I can be. And it's kind of been like a time capsule of the thought patterns I used to have, the things I would get stuck on, my like in the moment obsessions, like my creative journey in general. Done a lot, been through a lot, seen a lot, experienced a lot, changed a lot, and you've been there the whole time. And I'm very grateful for that. And I want to make sure that I don't gloss over how important that is to me as I struggle with the desire for more. So thank you regularly. Thank you for regularly joining the A.D.H. Deep Dive, the show that's not about ADHD but is filled with proof it exists. My name is David J. Mund. I'll see you next time, which will be in 2 weeks from now. Well, I'll try to do it regularly. But something's got to change. And again, I'm gearing up to make some big changes in my life that we'll talk about soon. Because you've been there for all of this, and I'm excited for you to be there for that. Because when that happens, I'm going to need a little bit of community. And I think you guys are the right people to talk to about it. So, again, thank you for joining the A.D.H. Deep Dive, the show that's not about ADHD, but is filled with proof it exists. My name is David J. Mund. I love you, and I'll see you next time.